Hello, this is an assessment for restoration of a Bechstein Model 5 upright piano made in 1898. Now it's got a common problem on these older Bechsteins Model 1 to 5, which we'll look at in a minute. Just looking at the casework first. And it's been repolished apparently in, I think, 1982. I read the date on the polisher put on it. I don't think he's stripped and repolished, but it's reasonable. It's a fair finish, and certainly the inlay here looks very good indeed. Very pleasant inlay, and common on the models 1 to 5 you get this inlay, and later models 6 to 10 you tend not to get it unless it's added afterwards. And generally the case is reasonable. It could be repolished, obviously. Could look then really perfect while we're restoring the piano. That could be done. It's a long job, either polyestering like modern finish, which really isn't terribly appropriate, and then French polish takes longer. So maybe keeping it like this, original ebony finish, might be the answer. It has got original library keys in extremely good condition. Can't see any that's been taken off and put back on. You can always tell that the join tends to look more pronounced. There's a join between the front and the back here, and they're a bit dirty, I think, to do with buffing. That'll stop them attracting the dirt. As client mentioned, the music stand, that there was a book holder in the middle missing. I'm not sure if there was a book holder. Well, it looks as though there might have been, but normally you don't have a book holder in the middle because it doesn't it's not of any use really, or at least I haven't seen one in the middle. That can obviously could put one in. It'll obviously, there we have the prop, and as I said, the prop was a bit loose. I don't really think it's that loose. It seems to be reasonably tight, certainly par for the course, I would say. There's necessary to have that music stand prop to bring it out so the music doesn't fall off. A lot of pianos these days obviously have one here. Normally they do. This swing one can go inside, as we had earlier on, so that means it looks attractive. You can see the inlay. Now, the common problem it has, as in a lot of models 1 to 5, as we've shown in many other videos, and we replaced many of them, the rest plank needs replacing. Basically, if you can see here, you can see the telltale sign that somebody's wedged something there, because the tuning pin, however big it is, however much you push it in, it still isn't tight because the rest plank's faulty. So as you take this felt out, we'll see which string of those was the problem. We'll say it's this right hand one here. So obviously they tried pushing the tuning pin in, tried setting it, and tried a bigger pin, and it's still loose. So these are much larger pins than normal, almost maximum size, some of them, so you couldn't really put bigger ones in. And the rest plank isn't holding, so need to replace the rest plank and replace the strings as well. I think that would be a benefit from new strings. Sometimes if it's been fully restored, we will keep the original strings because there's nothing wrong with them at all. But in this case, I think we can improve on these. And the hammers are quite varied in tone. They need refacing really, and voicing or replacing. There's enough felt there to keep these original ones. Looking at the top, it's not terribly worn through, so we could certainly keep those and reface them. It wouldn't perhaps be quite as good as replacing them, but replacing them was an extremely long job because you have to reweight the keys, and it is a very long job indeed. These dampers, they're they've obviously been replaced, and they're not quite straight. So if we can see that one there, for instance, the left hand string is not damping properly. I think even if we try pushing it over, it might settle back in the same place. So replacing the dampers would be sensible. There's several there with a slightly so it's not a major factor. We could possibly push them. I'm not quite sure if they wouldn't end up going back in the same place again. Other aspects of the piano seem fine. It's had the tapes replaced, and we'll show you the worksheet in a minute to see, as we've inspected the whole piano. As an aside, it's nice to see piano tuners writing things on here, just communicating with each other. I think for tuners to communicate with each other, it really helps for the piano to be looked after well. That's just the dates of tuning and what's been tuned, but perhaps write other things on it, like when it was restored or work that was done. I forgot to mention that one of the dampers got unglued and fallen down, but obviously we can re-glue that. So looking at the worksheet summary, the main work is replacing the rest plank and dampers, I think. Refacing or replacing the hammers, that's a decision to make. And refinishing the metal frame. I forgot to mention actually that you can often manage to do these without replacing the frame because it looks good, but this frame doesn't look good. It's very pitted. I don't know if that was when it was restored, and perhaps when it was, I don't know why that should be pitted really, as it's damaged on there. It's usually string damage that does that, but it's unusual to find that. But I think it would be worth respraying the frame at the same time. Looking down the bottom of the piano, the soundboard's in quite good condition. That you might find as you took the whole thing apart that you'd see some small cracks which could be shimmed, but it's not affecting the tone of the piano, and the bridge seems to be good. On these older models, they're very consistently well made. They don't normally get bridge cracks, but it's worth checking. So other aspects, the hammers needing refacing, so they're quite varied. When the hammers are worked on afterwards, we can even up the touch here. 38 is a bit low for middle C. It's normally going to be 47 to 52. 53 is okay for the bass there, and they're not too bad there. It's a bit of variety really, so I'll have to look into that if you'd like that improved. Setting it at 47 to 52, as we've mentioned many times before, would be the kind of range we were looking for. So loose tuning pins, refinishing the metal frame, replace the book holder in the centre. Well, I'm not quite sure what that was. If you want a book holder in the centre, or we can just fill up the hole, whichever you'd prefer really. I forgot to show you where it was written on the case, repolished in 1982, but that was useful communication as well. My normal camera's not working properly, so the sound is a bit different. I'm sorry about that. I'm not going to play the piano with the camera on the camera stand, but just play it a bit now. And it's quite varied because of hammers, but they're beautiful pianos. The tone of these is really, I very much appreciate the tone of these older Bechsteins, but they so often need the rest blank replacing. Because they're straight strung, the tone in the bottom bass isn't as big as it is for overstrung piano, but the tone in the tenor is better than I think the Model 9, which is overstrung. But the strings are slightly longer. We've looked at that before, and also the damping's slightly better because it's not overstrung, and dampers are more accurate when they're longer basically. That's mentioned on other videos anyway, so I hope that's helpful. And as you can hear, the potential of the piano is great. It's very resonant, very beautiful. Thank you very much for listening. If you're interested in having a Bechstein model 1 to 5 with replaced rest blank, it's quite an expensive job because it's taking the whole piano apart, but we can certainly do that for you.